Let me think for a moment about what you actually are. Not in a philosophical, overthinking kind of way, but literally. What are you made of, in terms of how you function, how you feel, how you decide, how you grow? Because most people walk around their entire lives without ever asking that question, and I think that's kind of wild. Today we're going to talk about your nervous system, not just your brain, your whole nervous system. And I promise you, by the time we're done here, the way you think about yourself, your habits, your potential, your struggles, all of it is going to shift in a meaningful way. This is the kind of information that used to cost a semester of college tuition to get. Let's get into it. So here's the first thing most people get wrong. They think the brain is the whole show, that your skull is basically the headquarters and everything else is just, logistics. But that's not how it works at all. Your brain is just one component of this massive, looping communication network called the nervous system. It includes your brain, yes, but also your spinal cord and all the wiring that runs between your brain, your spinal cord, and every organ in your body. And then back again. It's a continuous loop. Honestly, it's less like a computer and more like a river system where everything feeds into everything else. You can't really find where it starts and where it ends. Scientists actually compare it to a Mobius strip, that impossible-looking shape where inside and outside become the same surface. Why does this matter? Because when you feel anxiety in your chest, that's your nervous system. When your stomach drops before a big presentation, that's your nervous system. When you're around someone who has a cold and your body starts deploying resources to protect you, your nervous system is quietly running that operation by signaling organs like your spleen to release the cells that track down and neutralize that threat. You think that's just your immune system doing its thing. It's not. It's a coordinated conversation between your brain and your body happening in real time, constantly, without you ever consciously asking for it. Now, let's zoom in a little. Because this giant loop we're talking about is made up of individual cells called neurons, nerve cells. At the turn of the 20th century, a Spanish scientist named Santiago Ramon y Cajal and an Italian named Camillo Golgi figured out a way to stain neural tissue in a way that had never been done before. And what they saw shocked the scientific world. The nervous system wasn't one big blob of connected tissue. It was actually made up of trillions of individual cells, all separate from each other. Each one sending and receiving signals across tiny gaps called synapses. One neuron fires electrically, releases chemicals across that gap, and the next neuron picks up the signal and passes it along. You are, at the most fundamental level, flowing electricity. Right now, as you watch this, certain neurons in your brain are active and others aren't. And that precise pattern is why you're seeing these colors, hearing this voice, thinking this specific thought, and not some other one. I love this next part. Think of your brain as a piano. Any individual key isn't a song, it's just a note. But depending on which keys you press, in what order, with what intensity, you get an entirely different piece of music. That's how your experiences and memories work. There isn't a single happiness neuron or a single memory storage room somewhere in your skull. Memory, for example, is stored in patterns of electrical activity spread across a network of neurons. When those patterns get reactivated, you experience the feeling of remembering. Ever had déjà vu? That's just your brain accidentally replaying a pattern of neuron activity that closely matches something that happened before. It's not mystical. It's biology doing something pretty remarkable. Now let's talk about what your nervous system actually does, because it really comes down to 5 things: sensation, perception, feelings, thoughts, and actions. That's the whole menu. Sensation is non-negotiable. You can't opt out. Right now, your skin is registering pressure and temperature. Your ears are picking up sound frequencies. Your eyes are processing light. You didn't decide to do any of that. It's just happening. Here's something that should humble us all. Other species are receiving entire channels of reality that we're completely locked out of. Pit vipers sense heat signatures. Certain turtles and birds navigate thousands of miles of open ocean by detecting magnetic fields through specialized neurons in their heads. We call them animals like it's a step down, and meanwhile they're running internal GPS systems we can't touch without technology. Perception, though. Perception is where you come in. Perception is which sensations you choose to actually notice and engage with. While you've been watching this, there's been pressure on the bottoms of your feet this entire time. Did you notice it? You do now. That's the shift from sensation to perception. You have a kind of spotlight inside your mind that you can aim. And here's something that surprises a lot of people. You actually have two of these spotlights. You can pay attention to what you're listening to and simultaneously monitor your child across the room or notice how your coffee tastes. You can multitask, at least two streams of attention at once. The key thing to understand is that perception is under your control. Sensation just happens. Perception is a choice. Feelings are trickier. This is where it gets genuinely interesting. Your emotional states are heavily influenced by chemicals in your brain called neuromodulators. You've probably heard of some of them: dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, epinephrine. These aren't quite the same as the sensory receptors we just talked about. Neuromodulators work more like a DJ adjusting the levels in a room. Dopamine, for instance, is often described as the reward chemical, but that's actually a bit of a simplification. It's more accurately the motivation chemical, the one that makes you lean toward things outside yourself, that drives pursuit. That forward-leaning hunger you feel when you're chasing a goal. Dopamine, serotonin, on the other hand, tends to make you feel content with what you already have, satisfied with your current situation. Both are critical. Both can go sideways. This actually explains something important in the history of medicine. In the 1950s and 60s, when researchers first discovered they could chemically adjust these neuromodulator systems, it led to the development of antidepressants. But here's the catch: these chemicals have receptors scattered all over the body, not just in the brain circuits related to mood. So when a drug raises serotonin levels, it can lift someone's emotional state, but it might also blunt their drive, their appetite, or their libido, because serotonin is also binding to receptors in those systems. The effect depends entirely on where the chemical lands. Thoughts are the part most people never stop to question. We assume our thoughts just happen to us, and some do. They pop up uninvited like notifications on a phone. But here's the part that changes everything. You can also deliberately direct your thinking. You can choose what to focus on, what to analyze, what to plan. Most people don't fully appreciate that this capacity to deliberately guide your own thought process is a skill, and it's trainable. And then there are actions, behaviors. These are arguably the most important function of your nervous system. And here's why. Everything you sense, feel, think, and perceive, all of it only truly persists beyond your own lifetime through what you actually do, through what you build, write, create, and contribute. Neuroscientist Charles Sherrington, who won a Nobel Prize for mapping movement circuits, put it this way: movement is the final common pathway. Your nervous system is essentially a machine for converting your inner experience into external impact. Now here's where everything we've talked about snaps together. And this is the part I want you to really sit with. Your nervous system can change. This is called neuroplasticity. And for a long time, the scientific consensus was that this ability to rewire and reshape the brain was something that only happened when you were young. Children can absorb languages, skills, and patterns almost effortlessly. But we now know that the adult brain is far from fixed. Research shows that neuroplasticity continues throughout the lifespan, supporting learning, memory, and recovery from injury or disease. Your brain is not set in stone after age 25, not even close. But here's what they don't tell you in most self-help books. Neuroplasticity in adults doesn't come for free. It's not passive. For a kid, learning just kind of happens. The brain soaks things up like a sponge in the rain. For an adult, rewiring requires two very specific conditions. First, you need focused alertness, that slightly uncomfortable state where you're actively pushing yourself to pay attention to something challenging. Second, and this is the part that genuinely blew my mind when I first encountered it, the actual rewiring doesn't happen while you're learning. It happens afterward, while you rest, while you sleep. Think about that for a second. You spend 90 minutes intensely focused on learning something new, a language, a skill, a new way of thinking. And while you're in that focused state, you're essentially just flagging certain neurons and synapses as important. The brain is marking them. But the actual rewiring, the strengthening of those connections, that happens during sleep and deep rest. There's research showing that just 20 minutes of deliberate, passive rest immediately after an intense learning session significantly accelerates how fast the brain actually consolidates and locks in that new material. So if you're grinding yourself into exhaustion trying to learn faster and then going straight from your study session to social media or Netflix, you're leaving gains on the table. Your brain needed those 20 minutes to do the actual work. This also means that the discomfort you feel when you're trying to learn something hard, that friction, that mental strain, is not a sign you're failing. It's actually the entry point. The agitation you feel is caused by a real neurochemical release that signals to your nervous system. Something important is happening here. Pay attention. That discomfort is the door to change. Don't run from it. And this whole process, the swing between focused alertness and deep rest, is governed by what neuroscientists call the autonomic nervous system. You've probably heard terms like fight or flight and rest and digest. Those describe this same seesaw system, alert on one end, calm on the other. Your entire life, including your sleep cycles and your waking attention cycles, oscillates in roughly 90-minute rhythms throughout the day. That means there are certain windows in your day where your brain is naturally primed for focused learning and deep thinking, and other windows where it's better suited for creative wandering or rest. Most people just barrel through without ever mapping this for themselves. What if you spent 1 week just tracking when you feel sharpest, when you feel most scattered, when you feel most creatively energized? You'd probably start to see patterns you've never noticed before, and those patterns are your personal operating system. Here's my honest take on all of this. The most powerful thing about understanding how your nervous system works isn't just that it's fascinating, though it genuinely is. It's that it gives you agency. You're not at the mercy of your moods, your habits, your patterns of thought. You have a nervous system that can be deliberately shaped. The discomfort of learning something new isn't random suffering. It's a chemical signal that change is in progress. And sleep isn't just rest. It's when your brain literally upgrades itself based on what you pointed your attention at during the day. You are not fixed. You are not done. The brain's capacity for reorganization depends on experience and circuit use, a principle that spans from early development all the way through adulthood. What you focus on, what you practice, what you expose yourself to, that shapes the physical structure of your brain over time. That's not motivational fluff. That's biology. So here's what I want to leave you with. Drop a comment below and tell me this. What's one thing you've been trying to learn or change about yourself that feels genuinely hard right now? Because if it feels hard, if there's friction, good. That means your nervous system is actually engaged. That's exactly where growth lives. Growth is not accidental, it's intentional. If you're ready to build a better version of yourself, welcome. Stay tuned.